So I come to you guys today from my home in Saskatchewan as a burn victim, an injured worker with third and fourth degree burns to 60% of my body and a double amputee. I think everybody in this room very recently has been faced with a situation where we've identified that a coworker might be doing something unsafe, whether it's not following a safe work procedure, not wearing our personal protective equipment, maybe we're not tied off working from that height. 99% of the time, nothing happens. But that 1% of the time, when it goes the other way, you end up with somebody like me here sharing a story of a near fatal workplace incident. On July 29th, this is the long weekend, August long weekend at home. Me and my buddies had all kinds of plans for a big fishing trip, just like any other 17-year-old kid would have. So we went into work on a high note, and this is something that's very normal. But we got about a third of the way setting up that first bin, just to have the farmer come out from the field and say, hey guys, I apologize, but after I look at what you guys have done, this isn't the right material. So you can imagine that mindset and how it changed from a really positive, happy, hey, we're gonna be home early on the long weekend, to now we've wasted a good part of the morning driving to site, setting up on site, setting up that first structure, and now having to tear it down. Now after a brief discussion, we decided that we were gonna use that picker truck, we were gonna back it into place, lower the boom hook onto that steel structure, that hopper bottom, and lift it off the ground 4 or 5 feet, and just back it underneath this power line. As the operator of the picker truck, who was actually the owner of the company, proceeded, he didn't boom down far enough. And we made contact with that overhead power line. This particular line that we made contact with sent through 14,400 volts of electricity through my body in 3 separate cycles. And he's told me that all he could see was my hands out one end of that fireball and one of my shoes out the end of that fireball. As that electricity was trying to eject me out of that live zone, that's what he's seen, is that huge ball of fire with that 17-year-old kid that he's known for 3 days being tossed violently about 4 to 5 feet off the ground back and forth. It's 15 years later, he still wakes up in the middle of the night. His wife has to shake him and wake him up because he's yelling and screaming to stop. He says in that dream he can hear my screams. This incident affects him and my coworkers, I guarantee you, more emotionally than it has affected me. Where I laid in that coma for the next 6 weeks upon arriving at the hospital, over 60% of my body was burnt with third and fourth degree burns, that being the most severe degree of burn. Those fourth degree, that means down to bone. I spent a total of about 6 months in the hospital. I spent the next 5.5 years after that first 6 months going through reconstructive and plastic surgeries and physiotherapy. We can have the best safety program in the world. We can spend millions of dollars on it, but if it sits on a shelf and doesn't get communicated properly to our staff, starting with that orientation, outlining, here's our expectations, our safety program is going to fail. Orientation is a big thing for me. That's something I didn't have the day that I got hurt. We need to have a documented process, a field level hazard assessment, to sit there and fill out and say, okay, we identified this as a hazard, overhead power line. The risk is someone could die. Pretty high on that risk matrix, I would say. So now what are we going to do for a control procedure? We're going to have a spotter, we're going to have 2 spotters, or we're going to have a discussion to say, hey, let's talk to the group and maybe someone's got a better idea. Too often I hear in the conversation is, what is management doing for me today? What's my boss doing to keep me safe today? Right? Oh, they have a big role in that. But we as the frontline people have an even bigger role, because I need to start asking myself, and we all need to start asking ourselves, what am I doing to keep me safe today? What am I doing to make sure I go home to my wife and kids? What am I doing to make sure that David goes home to his wife and kids?